Alright, let's start with our exercise 8. Now, this exercise in particular is actually quite important for you to understand. Okay, so please try to concentrate and go through everything that is written here at least once. Okay, let's take a look. In the first exercise, we have created a function that is called LCM array. If you remember, LCM array. Okay, it used to take an array as an input, say for example 9, 7, 8, an array as an input and perform the LCM on all the elements of the input. Okay, so that is actually 504. But what if we actually provide a matrix to this function? What will happen? Can you guess? Now instead of this LCM array, if I provide this x, so what is going to happen? This is actually magic x, magic 3, x equals to magic 3, so for an LCM array of x. Okay, so as you can see, it is actually providing me 24. Okay, now why is that? Can you understand? Can you say this 24 is actually performing because it is only performing on this column, on these three elements. Okay, why is that? If you actually go back to our function, the LCM array function, so where is the LCM array? So that is our LCM array. Okay, so here in the function, the way we actually wrote the code is something like this. Okay, for I is equals to 1 to length of x, here the length of x is actually 3. Although this is a matrix, if I write the length of x, okay, it is going to give me 3, the first row number. Okay, 3. Now a is equals to LCM of a on x of I. This I is actually looping through 1 to 3. So when I'm calling this x of 1, x of 2, it is going to look into the linear index of this element. So it is looking at x of 1 equals to 8, x of 2 is equals to 3, and x of 3 is equals to 4. So it is only performing on the first three elements, that is 8, 3 and 4. That is why we are getting this 24. Okay, so our function LCM array is not actually operating on the all the elements of the matrix, rather only the first three elements of the matrix. Okay, now this is not something we want. We want something more efficient way to write this program so that it can perform in an array as well as a matrix as well. So if you remember, in a particular function that we actually run in our first lecture, that is called max. Okay, so the max function actually could run on an array like this. Okay, so if we could add something different, like if I write max of a of 1 or a comma 2, it used to perform on column wise maximum. If a is a matrix, then it would done column wise maximum, and it would perform row wise maximum. Okay, I believe you remember these things. And if I wanted to perform this max operation on the whole matrix, I would write something like this. So this is the three features. There are some other features as well in maximum. If you look at the documentation, you will see there are some none option, ignore none, and other options. So what we want to do is that we want to add these features in our built-in functions as well. Okay, we want to add these things in our function so that if we actually provide a matrix to our this function LCM array, if I write like this, it will provide the LCM operation row wise. If I write this, it is going to perform LCM operation on the whole matrix, something like that. So now the question is how to do that. Okay, now this is before I actually go there, let's take a look at something. Say for example, this was our max. Say for example, if I give a single input in the maximum, it is going to give the element as well. But if I write something nothing, it is going to give an error that is called not enough input arguments. The reason is I have to provide this function at least one input. At least one input argument has to be provided. I can provide two input parameters, I can provide 3 or 4, but there has to be at least one. Okay, but as you can see, this a, that is in particular, this is something I have to provide, and these are what is optional. I may provide, I may not provide. Okay, so this is something that is called a function. When I am writing this function, say this function name. Okay, if you remember, from this was the input, these were the input parameters. Okay, input parameters. Okay, we can write this way. I can divide these input parameters into two sections. Okay, one is something that is called compulsory. Okay, others one are optional. Okay, you can think of these things, these input parameters, as compulsory or optional. Okay, here this A is actually a compulsory parameter that I must provide that thing. Okay, these are optional parameters. I may provide, I may not provide. Okay, so this is actually one way of function handling. Okay, that I can provide different amount of input parameters. Okay, it will perform based on those things, the way we actually define. But to do those things, I have to define some, in some way I have to define. Okay, so just because if I write, okay, now let me show you something else. Okay, let me create a function to explain it properly. So not definition function. So we have created a function here named sum element, and we have provided two inputs, A and B. So let's save it here first. Okay, so let's save it here, sum element. Let's call it. Let's call it. Sorry, sum element. I am going to give two inputs like 5, 9. It is going to provide me the summation of two elements. But what if I provide one element like this, only 5? It is going to give me an error. Why is that? Because uh, here when we define the function, we have written it as two inputs. Okay, these two inputs is actually defined as a compulsory inputs. That means whenever I am calling this function, I must provide two inputs. I don't have the flexibility of this option that I have just shown, this compulsory and optional. That option is not actually provided to our function. Similarly, if I want to provide more than 3, more than 2, like if I provide 3, it is going to give me an error because I have I specifically said that our function is going to take two inputs, not more than that, not less than that. Okay, so I have provided our function with only compulsory. Okay, I have provided this with compulsory. I have not provided this option. This optional parameters can be provided. That option is not provided to this function. But there are ways to provide those things, and this is actually important while you are writing in professional programming. This is in every professional programming, when you write, you will actually come across these things. Okay, every function that you search here, you will see most of the function actually provides these kinds of feature, these optional parameters features. Now the question is how we actually can do that. Okay, so now try to understand how we can do that. So to do that, we actually something like this, that is called, instead of writing A and B, we write something like this, that is called varargin. So this actually stands for, okay, this actually means VAR stands for variable, okay, ARG stands for argument, okay, variable argument input, okay, variable, this VAR, ARG and in, so that is what is called varargin, variable argument input. Okay, so this actually, when I write something like this, okay, so it can actually take, this means that it can take variable inputs. Okay, that's what it actually means, variable argument input. That means when I write something like this function, our sum element function, can take variable amount of inputs. Okay, so let's see. So this one is not going to work now because A and B was the input parameters that we actually defined previously, but now we have not defined the inputs at A and B, so this is not going to work. Okay, so let's comment it out first. Let's comment it out. See, instead of that, we just write where are you? Okay, let's see what actually happens. Okay, so if I write something like this 5, it is going to give me a cell array with 5 because this varargin is the input. So if I write 597, now as you can see, when I write like this, it can take multiple elements, anything, any amount of element. I can also add another one. It still can take all the elements. Okay, so first of all, if I inside our function, instead of defining the parameters and ABC or something like that, if I write this one in particular, our function will be able to take multiple amount of inputs, variable amount of inputs. Okay, I hope it is clear. Now the second thing is that the inputs that it is taking and the inputs are actually taken as a cell array, and I believe you are already introduced to cell array something. Okay, so this is a cell array. So how do we actually cell array of numerical value? So how do we convert our cell array to a elements, that is like numerical array, not a cell array but a simple array, numerical array? So we can do it something like this way. Y is equals to just to something. Okay, so if I write something like this, it is going to provide all the elements one by one, not all together. To get all the elements together, okay, let's see, let me show you here additionally so that you can understand. If I define a cell array something like this, 5, okay, so this is a cell array of 3 elements. But if I write something like this, all elements at a time, you can see it will actually going to pop out one element at a time, not all the elements together. But if I write something like this, if I combine all of those things in a matrix, okay, that means all the elements is going to be grouped together in an array, and this is what we are actually trying to do here. Okay, we are popping out all the elements in a single array. Okay, now if I actually run it, say for example element, okay, as you can see our y was this one cell array, but now I have all the elements in a single array. Now we can actually perform all the operations that we want to do. Okay, I hope it is clear. So how we can do that? So now we can, if we want to add only the first two elements, any number of inputs we provide, we want to add only the first two elements, we can do something like this. Okay, we can do something like yi of 1 plus yi of 2. Okay, and now as you can see, the first two elements is actually summed together like this way. Okay, now there is another thing to work something like this. If I, instead of that, if I write something like say an text, can you guess what will happen? Now if you actually follow through the lectures now so far, I believe you will understand what is going to happen here. Okay, as you can see, it is going to convert, it is not going to convert into a numerical array, rather than it is going to convert it into a character array. So this is not going to work that way. Okay, so I don't want this way, I want something else. Another thing, so you have seen, so far we have seen how to define a function like this way, how to take out the elements, so how to take out the elements as a numerical array. Okay, now there is another thing that is called, let's say, let's write something, x is equals to nargin. Okay, nargin, if I write something like this, let's see what actually gives, what's given as x. As you can see, our x is actually 4. Nargin means the number of input arguments. I have provided 4 inputs, that's why it is providing 4. So if I provide something like this, so nargin is actually now 3. So we have learned a new function that is called, in together with varargin, there is another one that is called nargin. It provides the number of input arguments. Okay, so using these two features, we can actually create these functions like this way. Okay, and we are going to see, in the next lecture that how we can actually do that. Okay, so I hope it is clear. I believe it should be clear. If not, please try to practice a little bit by yourself. Okay, if you write it in your hand and see different things, then it is going to be clear, I hope.